The Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
Despite being hailed as the safest form of travel, the aviation industry has faced its fair share of perplexing puzzles and harrowing disasters. While many incidents can be attributed to human errors, adverse weather conditions, or mechanical failures, others remain veiled in uncertainty. From the mysterious disappearance of a Malaysian airline plane that vanished from radar, never to be heard of again, to a flight that gave birth to the legendary tales of the Bermuda Triangle and the tragic crash of a plane carrying diamonds and diplomatic secrets into a mountain, join us as we unravel the 15 biggest mysteries in the world of aviation. Number 15. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 remains one of aviation's most confounding mysteries. On March 8, 2014, Boeing 777 carrying 239 passengers and crew vanished during a routine night flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. Approximately 40 minutes after takeoff, the plane's transponder stopped transmitting, severing all contact with air traffic control. Analysis of radar and satellite data showed MH370 dramatically changing course and flying back across the Malay Peninsula, before turning south over the Indian Ocean, where it disappeared from radar screens. An unprecedented multinational search effort scoured over 46,000 miles by air and sea, but found no trace of the missing plane besides a few scattered pieces of debris washed ashore. The inability to locate the main wreckage or flight data recorders has spawned endless speculation about the plane's fate. Theories range from mechanical failure to hijacking to the pilot himself seizing control in an act of murder-suicide. Some have suggested the plane was commandeered to a secret location, perhaps by a state actor. Others posit more eccentric theories involving the supernatural, meteor strikes, or a Bermuda Triangle-like zone. Absent more definitive evidence, the Malaysian government concluded MH370 likely crashed into the remote southern Indian Ocean after running out of fuel. But the lack of wreckage far from commercial routes has fueled claims the search took place in the wrong location. The mystery also surrounds why no distress call was made, and why the plane's systems appear to have been manually turned off in an effort to avoid detection. Some theorists believe Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah hijacked his own vessel as an elaborate act of suicide, depressurizing the cabin to incapacitate passengers before ditching the craft. But any number of mechanical failures, from an electrical fire to engine trouble, may have necessitated Zahari's urgent but doomed diversion. Number 14. Flight 19. On December 5, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger torpedo bombers lifted off from Fort Lauderdale for a routine training mission. The 14 airmen were never heard from again. No wreckage or bodies were ever recovered, despite a massive sea and air search across hundreds of thousands of open ocean miles. The planes, notorious in their own time for being accident-prone and hard to handle, were part of a group dubbed Flight 19. Radio transmissions indicate squadron leader Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor became severely disoriented during the practice navigation exercise. Believing he was over the Florida Keys, Taylor led the flight far out over the Atlantic. In reality, they were off the Bahamas' east coast. As the weather deteriorated and nightfall loomed, the Avengers ran critically low on fuel. With radio signals fading, Flight 19 ultimately ditched into the dark sea. But the true fate of the planes and men aboard remains unclear. Mechanical failure and navigational confusion likely played a role. However, the area where the squadron disappeared has long been associated with the legendary Bermuda Triangle, where unexplained disasters are linked to paranormal activity or alien abductions by imaginative theorists. While no supernatural causes have been established, Flight 19's total vanishing captivated official investigators and the public alike. The Lost Patrol forever altered perceptions about the mysteries and dangers of the open ocean. More than 75 years later, Flight 19's vanishing still inspires new theories and renewed scrutiny, all attempting to finally solve one of aviation's greatest riddles. Number 13. Stardust. British South American Airways Flight CS-59, better known as Stardust, vanished in the Andes Mountains in 1947, leaving behind an enduring aviation mystery. The aircraft departed Buenos Aires headed to Santiago with 11 souls aboard, including 6 crew and 5 passengers. As it neared its destination, Stardust transmitted a bizarre Morse code message, Stendek, before disappearing forever into the icy Andean peaks. Despite a massive aerial search, no traces could be found except some scattered debris on a high glacier, which only deepened the mystery. The true meaning of the cryptic final transmission has never been deciphered. Some believe it was simply a mangled attempt to relay descending. Others suggest it was shorthand for an emergency or secret intelligence code name. Stardust's disappearance captivated the public's imagination, sparking rumors of sabotage, alien abduction, and clandestine spy missions. It was not until 50 years later, in 1998, that the frozen crash site was finally located on Mount Tupungato, solving part of the puzzle. But the aircraft's precious cargo list, which included diplomatic pouches and rumored gems being smuggled, has never been found. And with the black box recorders still missing, many questions remain unsettled. The plane and lives lost have become permanently entombed in ice and enshrined in legend. Stardust endures as one of vanishing aviation's most haunting and impenetrable mysteries, the sinister Stendek message and its ominous legacy. Number 12. Ghost Plane. The crash of Helios Airways Flight 522 stands as one of the most haunting aviation disasters in history. On August 14, 2005, the Boeing 737 was flying from Larnaca, Cyprus to Athens, Greece, when a lack of pressurization led to the incapacitation and death of all 121 passengers and crew. With no living souls left in control, the jetliner continued on autopilot as a ghost plane until it ran out of fuel and slammed into hills north of the Greek capital. The horrific accident was triggered by a seemingly small oversight. The plane's pressurization system was left in manual mode after a maintenance error the night before. As the aircraft climbed to cruising altitude, the air inside the cabin became perilously thin, slowly starving passengers of oxygen until they lost consciousness. With hypoxia setting in, flight attendants and passengers already incapacitated, the flight deck crew became increasingly delirious and unaware of the plane's depressurization. Air traffic controllers in Greece desperately tried contacting the aircraft, but with the entire cockpit crew lethally incapacitated, their calls went unanswered. Fighter jets were scrambled to intercept the jetliner, observing a haunting scene. The captain slumped motionless in his seat, and an unconscious flight attendant in the cockpit. With fuel tanks nearly empty, the jet continued its ghostly descent until plowing into the hills at over 500 miles per hour. The horrific accident demonstrated the insidious danger of gradual depressurization. Seemingly minor issues snowballed into an unrecoverable crisis, leaving all aboard Flight 522 powerless. Number 11. D.B. Cooper. D.B. Cooper's brazen hijacking of Northwest Orient Flight 305 in 1971 is one of aviation's greatest unsolved capers. On November 24th, a man calling himself Dan Cooper boarded the 727 in Portland, bound for Seattle, Washington. Claiming he had dynamite in his briefcase, he demanded $200,000 cash plus 4 parachutes, which he received upon landing. After releasing the passengers, Cooper ordered the crew to take off for Mexico, then jumped from the aircraft's aft stairs somewhere between Seattle and Reno. In pulling off the hijacking, Cooper escaped with over $200,000, never to be heard from again. The FBI extensively investigated for decades, but Cooper's true identity remains a mystery. Clues like a rash of 1980 copycat hijackings and partial ransom bill serial numbers have yielded promising leads, implicating certain individuals. But definitive evidence linking the crime to a single perpetrator has proven elusive. Cooper's bold caper tapped into the public's imagination, inspiring outlandish theories that he was everything from a former military paratrooper to a covert CIA operative. His ability to pull off the hijacking and vanish without a trace fuels speculation that the mastermind behind one of aviation's greatest mysteries may never conclusively be identified. Yet the allure of catching Cooper keeps the cold case alive. offering a chance this infamous hijacker may someday re-emerge from the shadows. Number 10. Air France Flight 447. On June 1, 2009, an Airbus A330 disappeared above the Atlantic en route from Rio de Janeiro to Paris, with 228 fatalities. Recovery of the aircraft's black boxes 2 years later revealed crucial details about AFR-47's final moments, yet significant uncertainty remains around the accident's underlying causes. At cruise altitude, the pitot tubes providing airspeed data became obstructed by ice crystals. This kicked off a cascade of failures, including autopilot disconnect and confusion in the cockpit. With instruments unreliable, the crew reacted incorrectly, leading the aircraft to stall and rapidly descend. While the sequence of events leading to this tragic airplane crash is well documented, ongoing debates persist regarding whether human error or mechanical and design flaws were primarily responsible. The autopilot disconnected, prompting the first officer to react by pulling the side stick, the control device that tilts the aircraft's nose up or down to its maximum position. This action led to a rapid ascent and loss of speed. Subsequently, the airplane entered a stall, maintaining this precarious state for nearly 4 minutes, during which it plummeted over 35,000 feet and accelerated to more than 400 knots. Regrettably, the flight crew was unable to regain control of the aircraft, and no distress call or emergency declaration was made. Ultimately, the aircraft crashed into the ocean at a high speed, resulting in the loss of all 228 lives on board. The impact was so forceful that the aircraft disintegrated into thousands of pieces. Some argue the pilots, startled by the sudden loss of instrumentation, fatally mismanaged the situation despite proper training. Others suggest Airbus's fly-by-wire systems critically hampered the crew's recovery efforts once the A330 went into a high-altitude stall. Number 9. Varig Flight 967. The bizarre and total disappearance of Varig Flight 967 in 1979 remains one of commercial aviation's most confounding mysteries. On January 30th, the Brazilian Airlines Boeing 707-320C cargo jet departed Tokyo's Narita Airport on an overnight flight bound for Los Angeles. Somewhere over the northern Pacific, the aircraft and its 6 crew members seemed to vanish without a trace. After Flight 967 failed to respond to air traffic control or make scheduled position reports, an extensive maritime search commenced. But no wreckage, oil slicks, or any evidence of the jet was ever found. Adding to the intrigue, Flight 967 was carrying over 150 priceless works of art bound for exhibitions in the United States, valued at over $1.2 million. The rare paintings by renowned Brazilian artist Manabu Mabi were insured for only a fraction of their worth, raising immediate suspicions of a sophisticated plot to abscond with the treasure. Yet the lack of any debris pointed to a more ominous explanation than theft, that Varig's cargo jet had met some catastrophic demise while crossing the vast Pacific. In the absence of material evidence, hypotheses on Flight 967's fate include extreme mechanical failure, hijacking or piracy of the precious artwork cargo, and even size attacks or detonation of a smuggled bomb on board. Conspiracy theories emerged claiming shoot-down by hostile forces or even alien abduction, but not a single piece of the vanished jetliner has ever been found despite extensive searches. With no data to analyze, the loss of Flight 967 and all its occupants remains a profound enigma, defying all logic and precedent. 40 years later, vanished without a trace, the disturbing mystery still looms of what ultimately befell Varig 967. Number 8. B47 Strateg. The chilling Cold War mystery surrounding a vanished American B-47 bomber hints at risks still lurking in today's technologically advanced aviation environment. On March 10, 1956, a B-47 Strateg bomber took off from MacDill Air Force Base in Florida on a routine training mission. Its destination was a strategic air command base in Morocco, but the bomber never arrived, disappearing over the Mediterranean Sea with 2 nuclear weapon cores on board. No trace of the aircraft or its powerful payload was ever recovered, despite a massive sea and air search. The plane's vanishing triggered dire concerns of highly unstable nuclear materials lost at sea, and fears that Soviet forces may have been responsible. Coming at the tense height of the Cold War, the idea of American nuclear weapons simply vanishing was alarming to the public and military leaders alike. While a crash into the sea was the presumed cause absent contrary evidence, the possibility of a more ominous fate loomed. Even mundane training missions now seemed imperiled by the rising specter of thermonuclear conflict. The bomber's disturbing disappearance without a trace served as a potent warning, one that still resonates 6 decades later as technology advances. Even the most mighty war machines and their fearsome weapons can succumb to catastrophic failures without warning, and the inherent risks posed by even peacetime nuclear operations are ever present. As aviation presses forward on the cutting edge, the sobering lessons of seemingly routine flights like that ill-fated B47 are more relevant than ever. Number 7. Amelia Earhart. Amelia Earhart's disappearance during her attempted around-the-world flight in 1937 stands as one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. The pioneering aviator was nearing the end of her global journey when she vanished without a trace over the Pacific. Her Lockheed Electra aircraft and navigator Fred Noonan were never found despite massive sea and air searches. The fate of Earhart and Noonan remains an enduring enigma over 8 decades later. On July 2, 1937, Earhart and Noonan departed Papua New Guinea en route to tiny Howland Island, their next refueling stopover across thousands of miles of open ocean. As they neared Howland, Earhart's radio transmissions indicated deteriorating weather and equipment malfunctions before contact was lost permanently. The U.S. Navy commenced an extensive 15-day search across 250,000 square miles of ocean, but found no physical evidence. Myriad theories exist for Earhart's disappearance. Officially, her plane is thought to have crashed into the Pacific after running out of fuel, but rumors have swirled she was on a spy mission for the U.S. and captured by Japan, crash-landed on a remote island, or even optically captured by aliens. Despite tantalizing clues, no hypothesis has ever been conclusively proven. Tantalizing potentially related finds, like a skeleton with 1940s-era women's items on a South Pacific island, only deepen the mystery further. As the first woman to cross the Atlantic solo, Earhart inspired generations of female aviators after her vanished in aviation's most legendary puzzle. But without the missing Electra aircraft or remains of Earhart and Noonan, their ultimate fate after lifting off from New Guinea into the overcast skies can only be imagination. The unwritten final chapter of Amelia Earhart's life remains one of history's most ceaselessly intriguing unsolved mysteries. Number 6. PanAm Flight 7. The 1957 crash of Pan American Flight 7 in the Pacific Ocean remains steeped in mystery and suspicion over 6 decades later. The Boeing 747 Stratocruiser, flying from San Francisco to Honolulu as part of a round-the-world service, impacted the ocean waters with 45 souls aboard on November 8, 1957. The impact force indicates the airliner hit the water at speed, splitting on contact. The sudden disaster of the aptly named Clipper Romance of the Skies shocked Pan Am and the public alike. Rescuers found something in the missing plane that terrified the world. The wreckage was located far north of the plane's reported position, suggesting it was off course. Some victims showed evidence of carbon monoxide poisoning before the sea impact. Most suspicious of all was a newly purchased $1 million life insurance policy and real estate trust fund set up by Texas oil tycoon William Harrison Payne, who perished on the flight. The insurance purchases and suspicious circumstances strongly indicate Payne intentionally brought down Flight 7 to secure a windfall for his family and associates. Experts believe carbon monoxide from the cabin heater was used to incapacitate passengers before ditching the aircraft. Pan Am's lax procedures allowed Payne to board without a confirmed reservation or ticket. The lack of conclusive evidence prevented a definite ruling of foul play, but Payne's actions in the weeks prior leave little doubt. The watery grave of PanAm Flight 7 took its secrets and the full story to the ocean depths. But the wealth of clues points to greed and murderous sabotage bringing down an airliner filled with innocent passengers. The tragic legacy of PanAm 7 is increased vigilance against passengers with malicious intent and aircraft systems that can be dangerously manipulated. Though officially unproven, PanAm 7 appears one of history's most audacious aviation crimes motivated by profit above human life. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. In 1989, a tabloid weekly world news reported a strange aviation incident involving Santiago Flight 513, a Santiago Airlines commercial airliner that vanished without a trace in 1954. 35 years later, on October 12, 1989, the same plane allegedly reappeared over Porto Alegre Airport. When it landed, the rescuers found something in missing plane that terrified the world. They discovered the perfectly preserved skeletons of 92 people, including the pilot, still in their seats, showing no signs of decay or damage. The engine was running, and the aircraft had landed without any communication with air traffic controllers. The story proposes a speculative explanation. The plane may have traversed a wormhole or time warp, causing the passengers and crew to age and perish during the mysterious journey. Share your views on this report by Weekly World News in the comments below. Number 5. Canadian Pacific Airlines Flight 310. On July 8, 1965, Canadian Pacific Airlines Flight 310 vanished during a routine flight from Vancouver to Tokyo with 52 passengers and crew aboard. The four-engine propeller airliner simply disappeared over the Pacific, never issuing a distress call or indication of trouble. Despite a massive international air and sea search, no wreckage or bodies were ever recovered. More than a half-century later, the airplane's total disappearance remains an impenetrable aviation mystery. The vanished flight has spawned many theories in the absence of evidence. The official conclusion was an unknown catastrophic mechanical failure, causing the plane to break up over the ocean. But absent any debris, darker explanations emerged. Some speculate the aircraft was destroyed by a bomb smuggled on board, either due to a deranged passenger or an insurance fraud scheme. Others posit hijacking or piracy to secret destinations in Asia by organized criminals. Even alien abduction has been floated to explain the inexplicable. The missing remain lost, presumed to have found their final resting place on the Pacific Ocean floor. But without tangible evidence of Boeing's fate, endless unanswered questions persist around Flight 310. The surviving relatives of those lost have endured decades without closure. Unless a fragment of debris is someday found that can elucidate the circumstances of the aircraft's demise, the unsolved mystery of Canadian Pacific Flight 310 endures as one of aviation's most disquieting legends, a forgotten plane vanishing without explanation or trace. Number 4. Yugoslav Airlines Flight 367. The 1972 mid-air bombing of Yugoslav Airlines Flight 367 shocked the world with fears of aviation's vulnerability to acts of terrorism. On January 26th, the McDonnell Douglas DC-9 airliner departed from Stockholm bound for Belgrade, carrying 27 passengers and 5 crew. Midway through the flight, at an altitude of 10,000 meters, a sudden explosion ripped through the cabin, disintegrating the aircraft within seconds. The only survivor was flight attendant Vesna Vulovic, who holds the Guinness World Record for surviving the highest fall without a parachute. Investigations concluded a bomb concealed in the front right side of the cargo hold detonated, destroying Flight 367 and killing all aboard except Vulovic, miraculously pinned in the rear fuselage by a food cart. A Serbian man named Zika Petrovic claimed responsibility with the Ustaše Croatian nationalist group, calling it retaliation for the deaths of Croatian political prisoners. However, others implicated the Yugoslavian secret police in intending to frame the Croatian separatists. With suspects and motives unclear, the full truth behind the bombing has never emerged. The mid-air destruction of Flight 367 marked a nightmarish first hint of the death that terrorists could unleash upon airliners and passengers. Vesna Vulovic's improbable survival offered a glimmer of hope amidst the carnage. The bombing remains among the deadliest cases of aviation terrorism preceding the age of airline hijackings and tighter security. For those aboard Flight 367 that clear January day, a routine trip ended in sudden tragedy at the hands of a hidden, faceless assailant. Number 3. Egypt Air Flight 990. The controversial crash of Egypt Air Flight 990 in 1999 remains shrouded in mystery and international intrigue. The Boeing 767 departed John F. Kennedy Airport in New York on October 31st, bound for Cairo on a routine transatlantic crossing with 203 passengers and 14 crew members aboard. Less than an hour after taking off into the night sky, the aircraft began an abrupt and alarming descent, plunging from its cruising altitude of 33,000 feet towards the dark waters of the Atlantic Ocean below. With no warning or distress call issued, Flight 990 slammed into the sea at over 350 knots off the coast of Nantucket, killing all 217 souls on board instantly on impact. The alarming circumstances of the crash immediately raised questions. Egypt Air had long maintained sterling safety records, and the 12-year-old aircraft showed no signs of mechanical trouble or defect. The weather was calm and clear that fateful night, posing no external hazard to the jetliner's smooth passage across the Atlantic. Attention quickly focused on the actions of the relief first officer, Gamil al-Batouti, in the minutes preceding the aircraft's rapid dive. Analysis of the cockpit voice recorder captured chilling evidence that al-Batouti, who was alone on the flight deck while the captain briefly exited, placed the 767 into a near vertical descent while muttering, "I rely on God." Various warnings from the aircraft's automated systems announcing their steep descent were audible. Attempts by the captain to recover from the sudden dive as he rushed back into the cockpit were tragically in vain. The National Transportation Safety Board's extensive 3-year investigation concluded that al-Batouti had deliberately crashed Egypt Air Flight 990 as an act of suicide. However, Egyptian authorities angrily disputed this finding, blaming mechanical failure while insisting the co-pilot's reputation and mental state showed no suicidal motives. The bitter disagreement strained U.S.-Egypt relations. Despite FBI analysis finding no evidence of an onboard explosion, speculation persists in Egypt that a mechanical catastrophe or bomb was covered up by American investigators. Number 2. Aer Lingus Flight 712. The mysterious destruction of Aer Lingus Flight 712 in 1967 still confounds aviation experts decades later. On March 24th, the Irish regional Airlines Vickers Viscount turboprop departed London's Heathrow Airport bound for Cork. Under partly cloudy skies, the 4 crew members and 57 passengers aboard the regularly scheduled flight could not have anticipated the tragedy soon to befall them. Approximately 10 miles off the southern coast of Ireland near Tusker Rock Lighthouse, Flight 712 abruptly plummeted into the frigid Irish Sea. All 61 souls perished instantly on impact. Ireland's limited aviation investigation resources hampered understanding the cause of the sudden crash. No distress calls were heard, suggesting whatever led Flight 712 to such a violent end occurred catastrophically and without warning. The condition of the recovered wreckage fueled intense speculation. While the fuselage damage indicates severe structural failure, the cause could not be conclusively determined. Myriad theories arose attempting to explain the loss: an onboard fire or explosion, corrosion, and metal fatigue cracks leading to airframe breakup, even a collision with a wayward missile from a nearby British Royal Air Force test range. A common belief centered around a bird strike damaging engines and hydraulics. But absent compelling evidence, Flight 712's demise remained an enigma. The 1963 vision of a safe, modern jet age was profoundly shaken by the Viscount's unexplained fate. The questions surrounding Aer Lingus Flight 712 persist decades later. While the original investigation was deeply flawed, new forensic examination of the sparse wreckage using modern techniques could finally yield answers. Until the truth is known, the shattered Turkish remains in its watery grave, haunting questions left by those who perished that day unresolved. The mysterious end of Flight 712 stands as a sobering reminder that commercial flying could never completely escape uncertainty. Number 1. AirAsia Flight 8501. The preventable tragedy of AirAsia Flight 8501 stands as a sobering reminder of the human errors imperiling even modern commercial aviation. On December 28, 2014, the Airbus A320 embarked on a routine trip from Indonesia to Singapore with 155 passengers and 7 crew. Approximately 40 minutes into the flight, Flight 8501 encountered stormy weather, and egregious misjudgments by the pilots led the jetliner to its doom in the Java Sea. As icing problems caused the aircraft's automated systems to disconnect, the crew reacted incorrectly to stall warnings, sending the plane climbing precipitously into an aerodynamic stall from which it could not recover. Plunging over 25,000 feet in under a minute, the aircraft broke apart violently upon slamming into the ocean, instantly killing all 162 people aboard. Only 70 bodies were ultimately recovered, compounding the tragedy for the victims' families. Investigations revealed a cascade of avoidable mistakes had doomed Flight 8501. Icing issues, poor maintenance, and the pilot's confusion and inability to fly the plane manually all precipitated catastrophe. While modern automation has made commercial flying exponentially safer, Flight 8501 demonstrated the hazards of pilots lacking the skills to take control without computer assistance. The disaster served as a chilling warning on complacency and over-reliance on technology in the cockpit. By laying bare systematic shortcomings in training and safety culture, the preventable loss of Flight 8501 presented invaluable lessons to be learned. While the cost was unconscionably high, enforcing stricter pilot competency standards, more rigorous maintenance programs, and cultures encouraging speaking up about issues may help avert future accidents rooted in ignoring human factors. By heeding its harsh lessons, some good can still emerge from tragedy. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.